Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the 30th day of April, 2025. And a number of really important stories have come across the wire since we talked to you earlier this morning. One story is that Israel is now 77. The day Israel begins in the evening, and at nightfall in Israel, they had the commemoration of the anniversary of the modern state of Israel forming some 77 years ago. Now, it was May 14th, 1948 on our calendar, but the Israeli calendar is a little bit different. And so it switches each year what day it falls on. But the point is, Israel, the modern state of Israel, has been around now, 77-year anniversary. And we'll talk about it tomorrow in some detail in the next few days. So happy birthday, Israel. Literally a modern miracle, one of the greatest miracles of history. Also, too, we did in between our first edition of Breaking News, Your Bible Questions Answered. What happened was I've finished it, by the way, both on the app and on the website and on YouTube. They're all listed, the various questions, all 92 of them that we've dealt with on Your Bible Questions Answered. So you can scroll down and look at those. One of them, though, I had with the wrong uh, uh, piece on it. I had it into breaking news. That was the one about the King James Version. And I'm not really good at this, some of the computer stuff. I do a lot of it, but I figured something out. I couldn't figure out how to put the heading on the right heading, so I just did it again and put it in, released it today. And interesting, whenever I do this one on the King James Version, I always get a few people who really get riled up and excited and not very thrilled with what I do, but most of them don't read what I say. And it's more of an emotional argument than an intellectual argument because when you read what we've written, there's not a whole lot you can say. Three major problems as we deal with the King James Version. One, a lot of the words that are used in the King James version of 1611 are barely recognizable by many people in the English language. They still may be in the language, but we don't understand really what they mean. Most people don't. Then there's a ton of words that are no longer in the English language, number two, that have fallen out. And so we have not the slightest clue what they mean. But the biggest problem is, and that is since 1611, a lot of the words that we use today had a different meaning in 1611. The meaning has changed. And so that's why we don't recommend reading the King James Version first. You could read it, and I suggest you do read it, but read it along with another translation because many of the words, again, that were used in 1611 are still used today, but sometimes with an entirely different meaning. And so that's why you need to get a translation that has, modern terms and modern words. And so that's why we don't recommend using the King James as the priority translation, although you should read it because there are a lot of good things about it. But again, because of the fact that many words don't mean the same thing as they meant in 1611, that's number one reason why you shouldn't use it as your primary translation. All right, things are going on here in Israel. Huge fires are raging around Jerusalem. The independence ceremony was canceled. They had a recorded rehearsal screened instead. It's from the Times of Israel. Fire officials say fires may be Israel's largest ever. You've got high winds, you've got heat, and you've got these fires going on. European countries are sending aid. Motorists forced to abandon vehicles. Fire hits Route 1 highway. Celebration nixed nationwide. So they're not celebrating tonight as they usually do, Tel Aviv and elsewhere, because of the fires and because of the wind. Headline number two, Israel ablaze, a national emergency believed to be a terrorist act. And that herein lies the problem. This is from the Jerusalem Post. The source confirmed that several arrests have been made in connection with the suspected arson attacks, but declined to give more details due to the ongoing investigation. A massive wildfire broke out on Wednesday in Israel in the forest between Eshtaol and Latrun, west of Jerusalem, forcing evacuations and road closures as thousands gathered across the Jewish state for Memorial Day observances. Fanned by high temperatures, low humidity, and strong winds, the fire, believed to have been set intentionally, spread rapidly through multiple locations across Israel. It's a terror attack on Israel, said Eli Be'er, president of the United Hatzalah Emergency Response Organization. He told Media Line this. He noted the fires were started in 20 separate locations. A security source also confirmed to Media Line that a terrorist act was likely behind the fires, adding that several people had been arrested. Several individuals from East Jerusalem had been arrested by Israeli police on a suspicion of attempting to ignite fires in the area, including a man in his 50s who was arrested after allegedly trying to set fire to an open field in South Jerusalem. And when confronted by the police, he attempted to flee, but of course was apprehended after a brief chase. and they found on him a lighter, cotton, and other incendiary materials in his possession. So with this horrible weather, you've got huge, hot, dry winds, low humidity, intense heat. It's just a natural for fires. And when you have people starting them, that therein lies the problem. Well, here's headline number three, which really seals the deal. All you have to do is burn. Hamas calls to set fires in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Youth of the West Bank, youth of Jerusalem, and those inside Israel set cars ablaze. Gaza awaits the revenge of the free, the terrorist organization wrote. Hamas posted a message encouraging Palestinians to burn whatever you can of groves, forests, and settler homes on the Telegram app on Wednesday. Youth of the West Bank again set cars ablaze, etc., etc. Earlier, the Yanin News Network Telegram channel called on Palestinians to burn the groves near the settlements in a post on Telegram on Wednesday. As wildfires continue to burn across central Israel, the channel posted a photo of a masked person setting a fire to a field as the town burns in the background with the text, "Settlers' homes will be ashes under the feet of the revolutionaries," and hashtag burn settlers' houses. So the wildfires again broke out in the Judean hills on Wednesday morning and have spread across Jerusalem as the day continued. Again, on social media, the fires were also branded as, quote, "the flames of the flood," echoing Hamas's name for the October 7th flood of Al-Aqsa. And Al-Aqsa, of course, now this is important, is the mosque there on the Temple Mount, the gray mosque that's on the southern end, not the Golden Dome. That's called the Dome of the Rock. That's just a shrine. It's not a mosque. On the far southern part of the Temple Mount is this mosque called the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they've actually named the entire Temple Mount Al-Aqsa. It is the holy site, supposedly now the third holiest site in Islam. Although the Quran doesn't mention it until the middle of the 19th century, Jerusalem was kind of persona non grata as far as the Quran was concerned and Islam was concerned. But anyway, point is, um, one of the reasons for the October 7th massacre, they said after the fact, is because they believed the Israelis were going to go up on the Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa, and destroy the Dome of the Rock, destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and build a third temple. And of course, that is not in their mind right now. But this is the situation that they are promoting. Now, also, a Palestinian news channel called Akbar Philistine tweeted on their account, on our X account or Twitter, they have 112,000 followers, a call to the revolutionary youth and all the heroes of the West Bank. Again, settlers' homes in the surrounding areas are your target. Burn them with your Molotov cocktails and set fire to the grass near the settlement outposts. And again, like we said, it's probably one of the worst fires in Israel, modern Israel's history, and it's still burning. It's very, very dangerous. A lot of people have been taken in for smoke inhalation and that, so we'll keep that in prayer. But that's the start of Independence Day. And again, none of the ceremonies could be held. The ceremony that was shown was a rehearsal ceremony there because they couldn't get out and do it because of the smoke from the fires. All right, let's switch gears here. Now, here's a real interesting story. This is in the Epoch Times. Russia-Ukraine conflict still too complicated for a quick peace deal. This is from the Kremlin. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said negotiators will need to resolve a whole series of nuances before they can bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. The end of the Russian-Ukraine war is not just around the corner, and negotiators still face several complexities. He announced this today, April 30th. Speaking at a press briefing on Wednesday, Peskov said Russian President Vladimir Putin remains interested in a ceasefire and eventual peaceful settlement to the conflict, but before doing this, it is necessary to answer a number of questions and resolve a whole series of nuances. He offered these comments as President Donald Trump marked his 100th day in office. Now, again, Trump made setting the ongoing war a focus for his 2024 campaign, and at times on the campaign trail, he suggested he could negotiate an end to the conflict within 24 hours of taking office. In a January interview with Fox News, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, offered a more relaxed goal to reach a deal within Trump's first 100 days in office. Last week, Trump said Russia and Ukraine were very close to a deal. However, and here comes the however, we mentioned it here on Breaking News. In his comments to reporters yesterday, well, actually today, Wednesday, Peskov suggested a deal was still to take time to finalize. And Trump said the same thing, if you recall that yesterday also. We understand that Washington is willing to achieve a quick success in this process, but at the same time, we hope for understanding that the settlement in the Ukrainian crisis is too complicated to be done overnight, the Kremlin spokesman said. They have sought to bar Ukrainian entry into NATO. That's one of their, red lines. That's Russia's red line, and have raised concerns that Ukraine poses a continuing threat to Russian national interest. On Wednesday, Peskov said Putin has tried to resolve these concerns peacefully before launching the Russian forces into Ukraine in 2022. He said the Russian president remains committed to his war goals and to preserving Russian national interest. In recent weeks, Trump has repeatedly acknowledged the possibility that Putin may be dragging his feet in all this about the peace process. Earlier this month, both Trump and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio both warned that the U.S. could actually back away from its mediator role if it doesn't see clear signs of progress towards an eventual peace settlement. When he had recently acknowledged, while he has recently acknowledged concerns about the Russian side slow walking negotiations, Trump also clashed with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky last week over whether Ukraine should cede territory to Russia to help settle the conflict. The Russian-Ukraine leaders have also clashed over competing proposals for a temporary ceasefire. And so basically, Zelensky said the ceasefire should not be for just a few days, only to return to killing afterwards. He said this 2 days ago on his April 28th address. There's supposed to be a 3-day ceasefire now that Putin's put another one in, another temporary one. He said it must be immediate, full, and unconditional for at least 30 days to ensure it is secure and guaranteed. This is the foundation that could lead to real diplomacy. All right, so Zelensky is, pushing for a ceasefire, and that he tries to appear that he is, basically cordial and he's workable with. Here comes the however. Headline number 5, another last-minute dispute delays signing of the Ukraine minerals deal. All right, this is a Breitbart. No, excuse me, Zero Hedge. Another materials deal headline that wasn't, not for the first time. A Ukrainian delegation's plane may have literally rerouted mid-air amidst Wednesday reports that Trump-backed deal was to be signed in Washington within hours. This is from the Financial Times. Ukraine's first deputy prime minister, Yulia Severenko, had flown to Washington to sign the deal with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, said 3 Ukrainian officials. But problems arose as Severenko's plane headed to Washington, and Bessent's team told her she should be ready to sign all agreements or go back home, said 3 people familiar with the matter. Apparently, the Zelensky government was not ready to sign on to all that the Trump administration required. This is even after the U.S. reportedly dropped conditions related to Ukraine paying back debt for prior U.S. military financial assistance. The U.S. and Ukraine landed these last-minute hurdles Wednesday as they were on the verge of signing this framework minerals deal when a dispute over what had been agreed in this marathon overnight negotiations cast doubt on the deal being finalized. So here we go again. This again from the Financial Times. The Americans want the Ukrainians to sign both the framework deal and a detailed fund agreement that would complete the full minerals deal on Wednesday, said the 2 Ukrainian officials. Now, as the article goes on to say, this seems to be the same story on repeat for months. One person familiar with the U.S. thinking said on Wednesday the negotiations had not concluded as Ukraine had sought to revisit terms agreed on at the weekend. In other words, they agreed on the terms at the weekend. Same thing happened. Remember, Zelensky is in the White House with J.D. Vance and President Trump. They to sign, and then he starts asking for more, starts demanding more after they'd already come to an agreement. That's when Trump threw him out. Besides, he wasn't wearing a coat and tie also. So it seemed the same story over again. Ukraine agrees to something and get ready to sign, then they go, well, we want to revisit a few of these terms. Now, as the article concludes, President Trump's reaction is going to be interesting, given that he's already blasted Zelensky for being late on signing the deal. Washington could be ready at this point to cut him and the Ukrainian cause loose after briefly halting arm transfers and intelligence sharing. So what a mess. This thing continues to go on and on and on. Like we said today, that sooner or later, one way or another, this has got to end and could end with Russia gaining the victory. They're poised to actually defeat the Ukrainian army, and that could be the final result. And then we just move on from there rather than some peace agreement to keep things as they are right now. Again, we don't know, but we know Russia will sooner or later have to stop fighting there if they're going to invade Israel, as the Bible predicts they will do, leading the charge in the last days, according to Ezekiel 38:39. So, as we come to this historic day, tonight, the beginning 77th year since the founding of the modern state of Israel, May 14th, 1948, according to our calendar, and it's now April 30th or May 1st in the Israeli calendar and our date. And bottom line is the miracle has happened. We're going to talk about this. And again, we're going to try to stress, kind of bring across how incredible this is. It's unheard of. A nation removed from our homeland and comes back not once, but twice. Once after 70 years, once after almost 1900 years. Never in the history of the world has a nation been removed from their homeland even once and come back. It's happened to Israel twice, and both times it was predicted in Scripture. All right, we'll talk about that tomorrow. And in the meantime, pray for Israel. They get these fires out and catch these people setting them. And until then, I'm Don Stewart saying thanks for watching. And as always, may the Lord richly bless.